On today's show, the New York Knicks are clearing cap space for Jalen Brunson. Should we be concerned? And we have some huge, big questions for the Dallas Mavericks going into the draft. We'll talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Hey, Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You're locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where the best way you can help us grow the show is to comment anything below. Let us know, what's your biggest question going into the draft for the Mavericks? What's your big question? Could be a free agency one, but it could be about the draft. Let us know below. And joining me, as always, my co-host, writer, and contributor at Mavs.com, the question queen, the one more thinking. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
I just want to say off the top, Nick, you have a great radio voice.
And Here we are talking about the draft. Dallas Mavericks.
It's great. You should work in radio one day.
Jalen Brunson, New York Knicks.
Just kidding. Radio stations, stay away. Don't hire Nick. But no, it's draft week.
I did go on the fan the other day with our friend Kevin and Reggie, and I snuck the soundboard in. I figured out a way. So everybody that doesn't like this, this guy just bringing his. I played the Dirk clip. I played the Dirk take that with you, and they were like, "What is happening right now?"
Who is pushing those buttons? But man, it's so much fun. I know we said it yesterday, but this part of the season is just a blast. Like the whole Apple screen report thing that comes out on Sundays, it's just going to be brutal for me this week because I feel like my battery's going down. I'm checking all the rumors, reading all the stuff. I just hook all the trade speculations up while Nick frantically looks around his screens.
I just removed you on accident from YouTube.
Oh, okay, cool. As long as I'm not, doing Locked On Cowboys, that's cool.
That's a throwback. It's an incredible time right now. There's rumors flying around everywhere.
God bless.
You're not getting rid of that easily. But we're going to talk about the Knicks clearing cap space for Jalen Brunson. We're going to talk about a couple of rumors that flew around that I think could affect the Mavs. And then we're going to ask some big questions about the NBA draft. The Mavs have questions about how much is Mark Cuban willing to spend? What does that mean? When we say that, what do we mean about the cap and about the luxury tax and all that stuff? And then do the Mavs have to hit a reset on Josh Green? What could that mean, a reset on Josh Green? Is it sending him out somewhere? What does this front office think about him? What does the coaching staff think about him? Is that a reset on his role? There's all kinds of questions that the Mavs could ask going into this draft. So let's start with this, Isaac Harris. According to Jake Fisher earlier in the day, and then Woj later in the day, on the draft show on ESPN, the Knicks are said to be targeting roughly $25 million in room to be able to chase Mavericks point guard Jalen Brunson, and are expected to find new homes for Alec Burks and Nerlens Noel, among other moves today. What was your reaction to Jalen Brunson possibly going to the Knicks, and the Knicks angling, trying to find space for Jalen Brunson?
I feel like we keep on talking about this, but for the Knicks, I think they got to do it on draft now. I think they got to do it soon to even to make their case, because I'm fully expecting right off the bat, free agency opens, we're getting a report that's coming out pretty quick, and it's going to be a Jalen Brunson, Dallas, 5-year, 125 with like a player option on that 5th year.
Well, and Jake Fisher also reported that people in and among the Mavericks consider the Jalen Brunson thing a done deal, that he's called teammates and things like that. And there are some other people with sources that pushed back on that. I think Kevin Gray even said he had a source that pushed back on the Jalen Brunson deal is a done deal, but it's being reported both ways now that it's either done for the Mavericks or they're still trying to push and see what happens with the Knicks.
Yeah, so it would scare me if we're getting like a couple days in the free agency and we're getting like, it's like they're giving the Knicks time to shed the money to these, cap space teams. And then, okay, well now, like what's taking so long at that point? That's where I would get really worried. But I just don't, I think we've all heard the 25, mark at this point for JB, and that's what I'm expecting. So whether it's 4-year, 5-year, whether it's the player option at the end of that, we'll see how those details roll out. But I would expect if the Knicks are going to do this, they're going to try to do it on draft night or before free agency to where they could go into the opening bell of free agency because, players and representatives of teams, they don't talk at all before free agency starts.
No, not at all. No one.
Not
does.
one bit. So they would want to go into that right off the bat with being able to say, hey, we have the space right now. We're going to offer you 25 and I don't know, lifetime Empire State Building tickets.
So the Knicks can't just sign Brunson. I think that's the thing we have to keep repeating is the Knicks have to make some moves. So if the Knicks do make some moves, there could be some casualties on the Knicks roster if they decide to make a couple of moves and then Brunson doesn't go there. But according to Woj, they're going to try to find new homes for Alec Burks. He makes $10 million next year. He has a $10.5 million team option the year after that. And then also trying to find a room for former Mavs great, Nerlens Noel. He's making $9.2 million this year. He has a $9.7 million team option. They're trying to move those guys around. And if they had to move both of those guys and they'd have to move one more, and it's probably Kemba Walker, $9.2 million expiring. So that's basically 3 expiring deals, like making up to, what is that, $28 million combined. And so if they can clear all those guys, then all of a sudden they have the space for it. Cam Reddish is another one. He makes $9.5 million on an expiring. Derrick Rose, $14.5 million, and has a team option for the next season. So those are the guys. If you start seeing those names run around, then it's the Knicks really trying to go after this and do this. But I think we both think that it's Jalen Brunson's going to sign probably day one, early in free agency. He's going to come back to Dallas. But I have a theory as to why this keeps happening with the Knicks.
Oh, where's the music?
The Knicks in this situation. The Knicks in this situation with Jalen Brunson are the White Walkers in Game of Thrones. You remember Game of Thrones, that show that we all watched and we were all super excited about?
Great.
And then literally...
I watched some of it again the other day.
And literally only you liked the ending? Like literally the only person. The White Walkers, the entire series, like all the seasons up until the last one, it was like, winter is coming. Winter is coming. And they kept coming up and people kept being afraid of them and it kept being this fear motivating factor for, okay, got to get my army ready. Daenerys is like, I got to go take back the throne. And then Jon Snow was like, I got to, build up this army so that we can go against the White Walkers. But in the end, it didn't really matter at all. They just got taken down by one slash of a knife from Arya. And I think that's what this Knicks thing is that it's either Jalen's representation working with the Knicks and saying, hey, why don't you just float all these things that, hey, you're going to start moving pieces around and make room for Jalen Brunson so that it's a leverage factor for the Mavs to say, all right, well, we got to up our offer because we have to offer him more than what the Knicks could get that they could easily clear in cap space. So it's like you got to find some leverage somewhere. And maybe this is Jalen Brunson's camp trying to find leverage, and they found it with the Knicks because there are lots of connections there. Rick Brunson, it works for that team. That's his dad. Yeah. And Leon Rose, they've all worked together before. The CAA, the representation, and all that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of ties there. And so maybe this is them greasing the wheels and trying to figure out a way to up Jalen's price for the Mavericks. And it's like, all right, the Mavericks would be bidding against themselves unless somebody came in here, and that somebody that's the White Walkers is the New York Knicks.
I was going to say, yeah, there could be a Rick Brunson and them saying, hey, let's get my son a few more millions of dollars here. Let's just float this thing out there, get Dallas's price going up. Also, if New York does, ship these guys off and create the space over the next few days, there's other targets too. That doesn't mean, oh man, they must be confident they're getting Brunson.
Tyus Jones would be great for them.
But we don't know where the Kyrie stuff is happening. There's other guys out there to where if they want to chase a Miles Bridges in restricted free agency or something like that. I say that because I could see some Mavs fans freaking out saying, if they go out and create this space over the next 72 hours, and then some Mavs fans are freaking out saying they would only do that if they think that they're getting Brunson. It's not necessarily the case at that. So
would you take Nerlens Noel $9.2 million into the trade exception?
If it wasn't my money,
it's not either way, like in a hypothetical or in a real life scenario.
I've had this weird thing where I would love to see Nerlens play with Luka.
Well, that's not weird. That's a normal thing. I understand that.
Well, I just think he would play well with Luka, but I just don't know where Nerlens plays if Dwight's on the team. Because I just don't think this coaching staff is going to say, hey, Dwight, you're DNPCD, and Nerlens is going to play over you because they kind of play the same role.
Yeah.
But Nerlens is better defensively, and he would be fine off the bench.
It would be fun. It'd be interesting to see him on the Mavs. It'd be interesting to see him come in and like play a role for the Mavs in a playoff run, and then Jalen Brunson signs back at the Mavs. I saw Josh Bowe tweet that today, but it was the first thing I thought of when they said that Alec Burks and Nerlens Noel, like, we just talked about those guys as trade candidates for the Mavs. It would be hilarious if they got one of those guys to help the Knicks clear space, and then Brunson just signs again. All right, coming up, we got big questions about the draft coming up. Do the Mavericks have to hit a reset on Josh Green? What does it mean for the Mark Cuban? What is he willing to spend? What does that mean? We'll talk about all that and more coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about BetOnline. It's the best place to check out the odds and lines in sports. This one has been interesting. Paolo Banchero, for number one pick, has been moving all over the place. And it's not just BetOnline, but BetOnline has these odds. He was at plus 900, I think, the last time I looked at this, probably about a week ago. Right now, Jabari Smith is minus 240. Paolo Banchero is plus 250, and Chet is plus 350. Like, Paolo has even moved ahead of Chet with these odds right now. So either Vegas knows something, or they're getting a lot of action on Paolo plus 900, and they had to lower the odds so that they don't lose as much money. But Paolo Banchero moving up is really, really interesting. So you can go check out all those odds and lines. There's a bunch of stuff. There's Eurobasket as well. You know we're going to be all about that Eurobasket when it comes up. Serbia is plus 275. France is plus 450. Greece plus 500. Slovenia plus 600.
Greece has better odds.
Doncic, saucy.
And then Spain is plus 800 under them. So go check it out. BetOnline. It's where the game starts. The ultimate NBA mock draft is underway right now. I have finalized the 5th day. I finally edited this whole dang thing and put it out. It's on the Ultimate Draft podcast. It's not on YouTube right now. You can go check it out on the Ultimate Mock Draft or the Locked On NBA podcast feed. Go check it out. Our pick is on day 4. We made a pick. We made a trade, made a pick. Go check out, see what it is. Everybody seemed to like our pick. And yeah, that'll be an interesting one. So go check it out in the Ultimate Mock Draft. All right, Isaac Harris, we got some big questions about the NBA draft coming up on Thursday.
Yeah, so if you're Dallas, this is the thing. Like, obviously they traded their pick. The Christian Wood trade, took the 26th pick from Dallas, went to Houston. So, naturally, if you had to like bet on what Dallas would do, is there going to be fireworks for the Mavs, whatever, on draft night? Probably, if you want to say probably no, because they don't have a pick now, it's like, all right, they're just going to be quiet about it. But there are bigger. What?
The image that stays in my mind was last year when Nico Harrison came out before the draft and like kind of talked, and then they didn't do anything at all, and then he came out afterwards and was like, that was fun.
Yeah, it was a fun, it's like a mock draft.
Yeah, it's gonna be like that again.
But I do have some question for the Mavs going in on Thursday night. And I think the biggest question of all that isn't particularly just for Thursday night, but really for the next few weeks, is how much money is Mark Cuban willing to spend? Because, you look at the roster right now, they're set up to literally be one of the highest, cap teams next year, highest payroll teams in the entire league next year. So before you even factor in a Jalen Brunson contract, you're over 150 million already. Cap is 122.
Last year they were at 117, and they were like the 21st. They had the 21st highest payroll.
Yeah, so you're about to add Jalen Brunson at around 25 a year. You're not talking about any more vet minutes at that point. You're not talking about the taxpayer mid-level. You're not talking about the traded player exception, which they probably won't use according to Stein. Yeah. So like, you're not even factoring in any of those yet. And you have some roster spots to fill too. So you're going to be so far over the luxury tax. Like there's worlds in which they're $50 million over the, salary cap in this, which is a ton of luxury tax. You can do all the calculations and all of that. So there's ripple effects to how much is Mark willing to spend, because you can bring back this full roster like it is, all the guys under contract, don't make any trades, use the exception stuff. And Mark's still going to pay out the what in luxury tax. Or do we see them go into draft night and say, and this wouldn't be popular amongst the fans probably, would they go into draft night and saying, all right, we got to shed some money, we don't have a draft pick, but is there a way that we can shed some of this luxury tax bill? And if that's the the initiative given by Mark, and that's one of the goals for Nico and them on draft night. It wouldn't shock me if we see a deal on draft night where it's like they look at the roster and they look at the bench and they say, all right, there's an expiring $10 million from Dwight. There's there's Tim Hardaway that's at 19 that they look at and say, all right, is there a way we can save money this way? And so like you look at, just for an example of this, you look at like the early 30s in Orlando, like the first part of the second round, you hear all these different reports about the picks in the 30s and second round picks. And I mean, they're all always flying off the shelves, teams wanting to buy picks and all this stuff. But you look at Orlando, who's going to have a ton of salary cap space anyway. If Dallas really wanted to shed the 10 million, which that's not including the luxury tax money, that Dwight's money would be there too. If they call Orlando and say, hey, Jamal Mosley, you guys, if you want a vet center in Dwight to be there with Jabari, Wendell Carter, and those guys, you have luxury, or you have cap space, all of that, a second round pick for Dwight Powell. That's the type of move that's like, it's not fun for Mavs fans. It's fun because you talk about a prospect of getting somebody in the 30s that's probably going to drop out of the first round, but it's not fun in the angle of like, all right, Dwight off the bench would actually serve a good role. But that's an example of a money-saving move for Dallas that would shed literally, I mean, do the calculations on that. You're probably looking at a 20, 30, $1 million, counting the luxury tax in that if they, for lack of better terms, dump Dwight's contract.
Yeah, and so we don't like to talk about that sometimes because it's just Mark Cuban's money. Like, does he want to spend it? What does he think this team is worth? Does he want to, continue to invest in this team? And almost like you're overpaying for this team because we don't think this team is a title contender right now. They could, if everything shakes right. But I'm not going into next season saying, all right, Dallas is a top 5 title contender. Like, of the teams in the NBA, I would say they are definitely up there. I don't know. Would you?
They're close. Yeah.
With the Clippers coming back and the Nuggets being healthy and
yeah, I mean this is
with Ben Simmons maybe
like future pod, but no, I think there's a world that they're saying that internally. They're saying, hey, we were 3 wins away from the finals, and now we added Christian Wood, Tim Hardaway Jr., possibly Dragic.
There was times in that Western Conference Finals where they're like, hey, we're just happy to be here.
Yeah,
which is true. And it was, but it's like they didn't expect to be in the Western Conference Finals. So now all of a sudden they should expect to be back there. Like, I don't know. And so that's just the internal thoughts of if they don't even see this team as a title contender and Cuban's going to spend all this money, then what's the point? Can they just, do that deal like you said with Dwight Powell? And maybe they get a second round pick from the Magic and like Koloko is there or Kamagate is there. And they get one of those centers that we had talked about already before they traded the pick. And they get that center that they can develop a little bit more. And they don't have to try and figure out, all right, well, Dwight's been with us for a long time and a veteran. We got to figure out, playing time for him with Christian Wood and, all that kind of, like, they don't have to deal with all that kind of stuff. They just bring along this young guy that will eventually, hopefully, pan out to be better than Dwight anyway. So it's kind of more of a long game play if they can do that. So these are just the things that they're going to have to figure out. And if we see a deal that sheds money, maybe that gives us insight as to what the Mavs are thinking about this team.
I can't wait for the YouTube comments to just slam you on you not thinking the Mavs are a top 5 team.
A top 5 title contender? I don't think that's this roster yet.
No, but I think
sure.
It could be
5.
close.
You could talk me into 5. Like, I don't know.
So another, like a bigger money saving deal for Mark Cuban is you look at like Portland at 36. They have some salary cap space. If they don't think they're going to be able to spend it on a guy that can come in and contribute right away, they also have Eric Bledsoe. So Eric Bledsoe's contract, in which is only $3 or $4 million of that guaranteed. So could we see a deal like Tim Hardaway for 36 in Bledsoe? And then you get Bledsoe and then you waive him. You're only on the books for $3 or $4 million of that. You're saving roughly around $16 million in luxury tax, like more than that, including luxury tax stuff. You're getting a 36 overall pick. This isn't fun.
I was gonna say, I think I'd be more bummed out about that trade than me saying that the Mavs may not be a top 5 title contender.
But I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to. Our whole thing is the question is how much is Mark willing to spend?
Yeah.
I'm not saying these are fun or I would do them. I wouldn't do these if this is up to me. I wouldn't do them because it's not my money. But what are deals that I could see Dallas doing on draft night that I wouldn't be shocked and I would say that makes sense. It's unfortunate. Tim could have a good role off the bench on this team. It's unfortunate, but I get it because I mean, that would literally save Mark Cuban like $60 million, $50 million total. Like if they did a deal like that, like, and it's just crazy to think about that. But those are type of deals that I could see Dallas doing on draft night to help relieve some of the luxury money from Mark, which goes back to the one question is, how much is Mark Cuban willing to spend this offseason?
That's a big question. We may learn something about that on draft night. We'll see if they make a move or if they try to dump somebody or they try something like that. We'll see. I'm inclined to think that they'll just pay it. Mark Cuban has already commented and said,
yeah,
we're going to have to pony up this year, right? For Brunson and for all that, we're going to have to pony up. And if they find a way to dump Davis Bertans' contract, that's like the one contract on this roster that I look at and say, okay, that's one that you just want to dump. Because no matter how much he pans out.
How do you dump it, though?
That's the question. But no matter how much he brings to the team, I don't know. Tim Hardaway, you could talk me into, okay, he could be worth his contract for this team. Dinwiddie, same thing. Like all these other guys could be worth it. It's Davis Bertans is the one that.
But if it came down to Tim for a second round pick or Davis Bertans with a future first attached,
well,
I think the fan base.
Do you have to do either of those? Is then the question?
No,
right.
No.
So the other question that we want to ask coming up is, do the Mavericks hit the reset on Josh Green? What does that mean? Do they reset his role? Do they reset expectations? Do they reset because his coaching staff doesn't see a role for him? We'll talk about that around the draft coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Built Bar. It's a protein bar. It tastes like a candy bar. Isaac Harris, we got to try the Mud Pie Bar. They sent us a couple of them.
Immaculate.
Tell me about it.
It was great. I got 2 of them in the mail for free. And ate them 2. I ate 2 of them in 24 hours. They were great.
The Mud Pie Bar is not on the website right now, so you got to keep checking because they come back. They come back in waves. But brownie
Why
batter.
did I just hype this thing up?
But the brownie batter bar that I think is similar to the Mud Pie is still there, and that one is incredible. I had one of those today. They're absolutely delicious. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your entire order. It's built.com. They have all kinds of other stuff too. They have Built Boost. They have Built Broth. They have rewards you can get. They have all kinds of different things on Built Bar. Get a variety pack and try a bunch of different ones. Get the puffs in there if you're going to do the variety pack because I like the puffs a lot better than I like the regular bars. I would much rather buy the puffs than the bars. So, but it's different for everybody. So go check them out. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. It's built or nothing. All right, Isaac Harris, we're continuing our questions, big questions about the Mavericks going into the draft. What do the Mavericks think about Josh Green, and what could a reset button for Josh Green mean?
It's such a unique spot for him in Dallas that if you asked me right now and you said, Isaac, what's one Maverick on the roster currently that you don't think's on the team by the start of next season? My answer would be Josh Green. And because of just the situation that he's in, like he didn't play a ton in the playoffs. We don't know what type of role he's like.
And they tried with him.
He was the previous regime's draft pick. Bob Vulgaris, Donnie.
Two regimes removed. First Bob Vulgaris and then Donnie Nelson and Rick Carlisle.
A lot of people in that draft room, a lot of big stories coming out of that draft night. So that was before Nico and them. They tried to make it work this year. It ended rocky as far as his role in the rotation and stuff in the playoffs. So now you look at this year, look at his contract one. This is the last like guaranteed year of his contract coming up. And then you got to make a decision. Are you going to pay him? Are you going to extend him? Are you going to do the qualifying offer? All of that. So the question you ask yourself then is, all right, well, what's he going to be able to prove this year to give you a better answer of what you want to do with him long-term? Because he's still only 21. So then you ask yourself, what role is he going to have on the rotation? It's like, all right, well, he's not going to start. So then you look at now we have Dinwiddie. Well, now we have Tim Hardaway. Now we have Maxey. Oh, well, then we have the guy that we think they're going to add with the taxpayer mid-level. So let's just pencil in a Gary Harris or something like that.
Yeah.
So now we're like, all right, Dinwiddie, Hardaway, Gary Harris, Maxey. Well, then we have Dwight. Well, okay, so where's Josh even playing? So at that point, it's like, are you even going to have any clarity of what he is if he's not going to play to where you could have clarity on what his role is moving forward? Then how are you supposed to make a decision on his future extension and all of that? That's why I just think if you're Dallas, I could see them hitting the reset on Josh Green of this draft. Like if they went into the second round and they swapped him out with the second round pick and I say hit reset in it of, all right, let's hit reset in. Who's the next young guy that we can bring in and develop and see if he fits the system and all that type of thing? Does he get added? I feel like I saw some speculation on the Twitter sphere of, does he get added into the Christian Wood deal, since that's not official yet, and some pieces could be added to that. I don't know what the path forward for him, if they go out, if they don't make any more trades and then they go out and add another wing in free agency, what's the path forward for him to where we know what he is?
Plus, we saw Frank Ntilikina really step up into a role for the Mavs.
Yeah,
and
I didn't even mention it.
Yeah, he's like a player that could take all the minutes from Josh Green, right? He was not healthy for some of the season, and that's why he didn't play and Josh Green did at times. So the reset is interesting, because could you get a high second, or could you get even a mid-round second pick where you're trying Gabriel Procida, like you try that guy and that's your reset. You're like, hey, we'll take the upside on this guy instead of trying to fit Josh Green into this role that we've been trying for the last couple of years. Or does a Kamagate or a Koloko, do they fall? And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, we can do this deal and get these guys who we think has a higher upside anyway.
Yeah.
And try that. Or, I'm even seeing Jalen Williams from Arkansas. Like, is that a guy that falls? And then all of a sudden where, the Mavs are going after him. But I think.
And you're resetting the contract. That's the thing. It's like, his contract is. Yeah, exactly. But like, you're resetting the contract, and like, you get one more year with Josh to figure out what you want to do with him, basically. And it's like, if you get another younger guy in there, well, now you have a few more years to develop that guy. So I feel like there would be a portion of Mavs fans that would be kind of upset about a deal like that. Like, oh man, Josh showed some flashes last year. And my only response to that Mavs fan would be, all right, well, what role do you think he'll have this year? If you're also wanting them to get a Gary Harris or something like that, if they don't make any trades, if they go out and make, another 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 type deal and opens up some more spots, then yeah, if he could be a guaranteed 7th or 8th man off the bench for this team. But I just don't think that's a lock right now.
Yeah, and so that's why you have to ask this question, because he doesn't have a for sure role. The contract is coming up, and they could hit the reset and get a guy that this regime likes. That this regime picks themselves. Not that they don't like Josh Green. We don't really know what they think about Josh Green as far as the front office goes. They didn't throw him into the Christian Wood trade, so that at least means something.
For now, we don't. That deal still isn't official yet. So like, I mean, could things change on that? I mean, they very well could. I mean, you don't think they will, but I don't know. They might.
He also wasn't really an expiring contract, in which that's what the Rockets wanted. Yeah. So that's part of it as well. But yeah, hitting reset on Josh Green is fascinating if they decide to do that. Throw him in a deal or make a deal with just him, and that gets off some salary possibly, because going from his contract to a second round picks contract is a difference too, and that means a lot with the luxury tax. But could they hit some of those?
Well, I was gonna say some of those second round picks, like we're seeing, Sam Vecini, great draft guide and everything at the Athletic. He put a piece, I think it was this mock draft piece actually. It was talking about just the info between teams and agencies right now of how some agencies are wanting their players. Like some teams are already talking about players up into the 30s about being a two-way contract. And it's like, that's just like crazy to think about how that's impacted the draft, how players wanting to even fall out and like all this stuff. So we're probably going to see some players like drop in the second round. We're like, oh my gosh, why are you even in the second round at this spot? But like, that's the type of thing salary cap wise for Dallas is, if you have plans to chase after some older vet minimum guys, and you're like, all right, if this spot, the Josh Green spot or a second round pick spot, it's not going to play much this year, then I could see them swapping it out for, all right, well, let's go get our two-way guy right now in the middle of the second round for Josh Green, something like that. And if I'm a young team in the league and I have some rotation minutes, I'm taking the swing on Josh Green too. Like I would definitely say, here's a second round pick. You let me take Josh Green. We know you're a conference finals team. You guys are thinking
got time for this.
Yeah. It's like Dallas is, probably doesn't have time for that. And so, but a younger team out there that does, I would definitely swing on Josh Green, because he definitely showed some signs this past year.
For sure. And we hope that those signs matter for the Mavs, and maybe they don't add a defensive wing, and then Josh Green has a bigger role for this Mavericks team. And the hope is that he shows more in this front office, and the coaching staff likes him, and he continues to develop, and the 3-point shot becomes real, and the passing and all that stuff. And all of a sudden you have like a nice like wing off the bench that the Mavericks can play a ton. So that's the hope.
Yeah, 100%. Theo Pinson, baby.
Oh, well, Theo Pinson's another one that's probably could take minutes from Josh Green.
Yeah, he'll be on the roster. So it's just I think it was a little telling of, once again, you can never have enough of these guys, of these wings, the 6'6", 6'7". We say this all the time. But if Dallas is going to make a priority to say, hey, we need another wing off the bench, we want to use that taxpayer mid-level to go get another wing, in a way that tells me a little bit how they view Josh Green. Because if they were very confident in Josh Green being that wing defender off the bench, I think Mark would probably put the checkbook up and say, we already got the guy, and save his money on that. But the argument could be back at me of saying, well, we always need these guys. So it doesn't mean that they use it and that means Josh Green's out. So I can see both ways. It's just, if I had to pick somebody that wouldn't be on the roster by the start of next year, I would pick Josh Green because of all the reasons laid out. So
any other questions you have for the draft?
I mean, if they don't do any, that type of trade, do they buy a second round pick in the sense of they have roster spots?
Speaking of, is Mark Cuban willing to spend?
Yeah. I mean, it's like every year teams are selling second round picks. Like the Lakers are probably going to buy a second round pick. And it's like Dallas has roster spots. Is if there's somebody, I mean, look at the guys that they worked out. Like look at when Rafael Barlow was on our podcast and him talking about, man, Dallas is kind of late in the game, doing draft workouts and listing out some of the guys that Dallas worked out, and Kamagate and the guy from Michigan. And so it's like, were some of those guys mid-second round guys? And they already knew that, the Wood trade was going to happen. They're like, all right, we're just going to work out some second round guys. We might, try to buy in a pick. Could we get a Kamagate at like a 40th, overall, or 36 or something like that? Well, we can buy a pick. Mark told us we could buy a pick and get us a second round flyer type. That, do they do something like that? We would love it. Love it for content wise. I'd love to add a young guy to the team.
And it's always fun to bring in new blood like that.
Yeah, it's fun. And for us not to do all of our draft stuff for nothing.
There you go. We will have you all the way up until the draft and continue 5 days a week throughout the offseason. We will have tomorrow. We're going to do some of our more draft-focused conversations about what do we think about the top of the draft. What are some deals that could happen around the draft, like DeAndre Ayton or John Collins, that could affect the Mavericks in a way that the Mavericks aren't going to trade for those guys, but it could affect the Mavericks in a different way. So we'll talk about all that tomorrow. Go check out the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Rafael did a great episode today about the Kings situation. He kind of ran through a mock draft, talked about the Kings with Jaden Ivey and Keegan Murray, and how the Kings are leaning towards the safe pick, the best fit in Keegan Murray, instead of going for the best talent and the best player available in Jaden Ivey. It's an interesting conversation. So go check out Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom!